first time in Geneva, and I hope this will not be the last. Mr. Arauquinto, please.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Faustino Pinto. I was born and continue living in a Brazilian town called Juazeiro do Norte, in the regional state of Ceará. I'm national coordinator of MOHAN, the Brazilian movement for the reintegration of people affected by Hanseníase disease. I'm very happy to be here at the United Nations and speaking to the world and hopefully being listened to about a fact that left a mark in my life and yet does not summarize my life. I had Hanseníase disease. This fact marked my life because I had the first signs of the disease at 9 years old. At 14, I was already slightly disfigured and starting to experience loss of movement in my feet and hands. I also had a stuffed nose and nosebleed. And my face was becoming disfigured. I didn't recognize myself at the mirror. That person wasn't me. At 18 years old, I was finally diagnosed after tens of medical consultations. Almost 10 years passed with absolutely no one thinking about any Hansen's disease diagnosis. No one. I arrived at the health services with multibacillary Hansen's disease, physical impairments, several uncertainties, and fear of the disease. But when I received the diagnosis, I felt happy because I finally knew what I had. What I didn't know was that the disease would bring so much prejudice and discrimination. Some members of my family were afraid of getting sick, and because of that, they didn't visit my parents' house. Still, I didn't know then, as I don't know now from whom I got the disease. I went through treatment for 5 long years, at the end of which I received medical discharge for being cured. This would have been liberating if it weren't for the abandonment and neglect of the health system after bacteriological cure. When I thought about retrieving my life, I was taken with diagnosis by Hansen's disease reactions. I suffered for more than 3 years with reactions, in the middle of which I was hospitalized and almost died. My father and mother had a very important role in my life. They sheltered me, loved me, and took care of me. But stigmatization is something that is experienced in a very personal way. It's a mark that accompanies us throughout our lives, and each individual deals with it in a different way. From the bottom of the well in which I found, I had to get strength and remove that mark from within me, from my own soul. I succeeded by trusting the very words I used to persuade people that Hansen's disease is curable, and that prejudice is a distorted interpretation of reality. Then, I grew stronger and I started fighting a hard and difficult battle. What makes me sad is that after 31 years since I was diagnosed, some people are still keeping arrive at the health service in the same way as I did. Several years pass while some people are strong to be diagnosed, and only when they evolve into a classical Hansen's disease patients. Is that the health systems acknowledging them and identify Hansen's disease. And still they are not seen as an entire human being, but as a storage for the bacillus that needs to be destroyed before it spreads. The patient already arrives at the health service broken from the inside, with the self-esteem destroyed, the body changed by the long-lasting cruel attack of the bacillus. Sometimes persons affected even have to face the lack of preparation of health workers. Sometimes it's even humiliating and embarrassing to go to the health service. At the social movement, I also witnessed the pain and the struggle of the persons who were segregated by the state. Even after the discovery of a cure, people continued to be persecuted and isolated. That was a straight crime as well. and one that most of the nations the world perpetrated. In Brazil, we achieved the recognition of this crime and reparation measures for the people who have suffered this institutional violence. We are now discussing the crime of the segregation of the children, of the persons affected, and the strong of the right to truth and memory. Our aim is that this type of crime will never be repeated and that society will never commit heinous crimes again. I have a dream. I dream with the day in which the human being affected by Hansen disease is seen as a role and not only as a reservoir of bacillus. People feel, think, suffer, and have essential needs based on their own existence. In some parts of my country, there are places in which the medicine for killing the bacillus is provided, but there is no one there to care for the hands, feet, face, and also for the minds in pain. Complementary medicine and comprehensive assistance are lacking. To see grown-ups, children, and teenagers with already multibacillary Hansen disease suffering from prejudice and discrimination at schools, in the streets, in their communities, it's, in my view, a state's responsibility. In order to end with prejudice, it is necessary to disseminate objective and concrete information for people to understand the disease and get rid of their fear. During the Latin America and Caribbean meeting of persons affected, we discussed how words such as leprosy and lepra make so much damage. We pointed out how Brazil made progress against prejudice and discrimination by changing the terminology and using the scientific nomenclature, Hansen disease. Therefore, removing the shield of leprosy from us and leave it to Lazarus in the Bible. It's very important that the United Nations and the World Health Organization can welcome this change. Changing their own attitude towards Hansen disease would inspire the world to change as well. However, such transformations is dependent upon our demand for being heard by the governments. We are not guilty of being sick. It is the lack of efficiency of the health services that disfigure us. It is the lack of public interest about us that causes us impairment and disabilities. But none of these conditions make us incapable of fighting. On the contrary, pain makes us stronger. And that is why that I said at the beginning that despite having marked my life, Hansen disease does not tell everything about my life. I overcame it to live many other stories, including this one. The story of an activist that's in the United Nations saying to the world, like myself, there are thousands of persons who still go through the diagnosis of Hansen disease. And we need to better prepare the governments, the health services, and the society to deal in a dignified manner with all of them. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Mr. Pinto. I cannot imagine how difficult it was for you and how much terror you were under when you were not knowing what was the condition you were in. And of course, all the stigma and discrimination that normal, I guess, people without leprosy do not face. I think, and it is unacceptable that there are more than 2 to 3 million people who are affected by leprosy around the world, which face similar difficulties. But thank you for being very frank with your story, and I think this makes us understand better such difficult conditions you all face. Let me now ask Ms. Rasna